the show, everybody. Today is Food for Thought 23, and so still going strong. I'm here to talk with Sher about a unique approach to trauma, unbind from the hold of traumatic experiences. So Sher is a trauma recovery specialist, author, recovery writer, and speaker. Sher, would you like to introduce yourself?
That's a hard one to follow. Yes, hi, I'm Sher. A lot of you know me as Sher Unbound. I'll get to how I got that name Unbound as we're discussing and talking, but I live here in the Gulf of Mexico. Beautiful, warm, sunny. I am a trauma recovery specialist, as Matt, as you mentioned, and what that means is I create safe spaces. I create a safe space online or in person to hear people, to let them speak, to let them share their experiences, and together we work through how to unwrap, unbind themselves from the past so that they can live more fully and deliberately in the present.
I love that. More fully and deliberately, and I think that's what all of us are trying to do with our lives. So specifically trauma, what is trauma?
That's a big question. Trauma can come in from anything and in any form. It's been my experience anyway. As I understand it, it's a deep emotional impact that happens to you, to your mind, to your body, to your spirit, and anything that leaves a strong emotional mark, a strong emotional impact on you itself, in your memory, in your body. That is trauma. It's how you respond to an event, an adverse experience. It's your response. And then trauma is like that overall umbrella, that arching term that just pretty much covers bad relationships, breakups, domestic violence, sexual assault, abuse in any form.
Yeah, so it's when we almost have the energetic residue trapped in our body of the experience, and we can't escape the memories and everything.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I did not, and I'm probably going to jump ahead on you, but I did not, I recognized that I had experienced trauma, of course. However, I didn't know the depth of it. I thought how I was living, how I was acting, the choices that I was making, I thought those were all normal, that everybody acted like this. And that I also thought, though, that I was the worst of the worst because I didn't speak about what had happened to me. I didn't talk about it. I didn't really want to think about it, but the whole time it was going on in my body. It was affecting my body in every physical way imaginable. Gaining weight, becoming physically ill. I got to even one point, because of unexpressed emotions and unreleased experiences, I was walking with a cane for quite a few years, and they were projecting me to be bedridden within X amount of years. And that was all turned around, which I'll share in a little bit. So
yeah, wow, I didn't know that actually. And so you said there you felt it was normal. So why do you think so many people feel that it's normal, or they can't express themselves or talk about it?
We grew up with. It's what we grew up with. When I was a child, my story began well before when I was probably even an infant. But my experiences, I was sexually abused by my father. He turned me into, I hate to say this, but I became his mistress in every sense of the word, as a child, and all the way up into my teen years when I ran away. I was told by him, threatened, etc., to not tell. And I was taught in many ways that that was normal behavior. But then I was threatened if I talked about it, what would happen? I would lose my mom. Well, I'd already lost one mom. I didn't want to lose number two. So I complied and I became quiet, and I stayed quiet. And then when I was a teenager, I started to change. I started to open up. And in a health class one day, I learned what incest was. We were talking about sexual abuse and about, the things that they do in junior high. And I recognized that it wasn't me that was wrong. What was happening to me was wrong.
Yeah.
And when I went to tell, I was shut down. I was told, put on your big girl panties and deal with it. All women do. We all have to.
And who were you told that by? Interesting.
A teacher.
By the teachers, right?
I told her, she said, I'm safe. You can come talk to me if there's anything. And she said this in class that day, that, if we need to tell somebody something, that we need to. So I did. And I was shut down. And it was right after that I chose to run away after a very specific incident that made me decide I'm done, I'm out. And I ran away, never went.
It shocks me, actually. It really shocks me that people can offer support to children in a school, teenagers, children, similar thing, and then say, oh, sorry, that support that I've just offered you isn't there. That in itself is a pretty challenging thing to deal with. Yeah, cool.
We cannot continue that. We cannot. Society has to wake up. We cannot continue to send double and mixed messages, teaching our kids to please tell, to please talk, to please find somebody safe. Well, how are we supposed to when the people that they're saying they are safe are not? When they're telling them this didn't happen, how could you make up such things? How could you make up such a terrible story? When I even reported my father to his commanding officer, because he was in the military, when I reported him to the commanding officer, I was called a liar. I was called a fantastical teenager, that I was imaginary, and that my imagination was running away with me. Nope, it wasn't. I chose at that time not to talk about it anymore. I just didn't. I told my future partner, my husband, I told him, but that wound up being a mistake because he used that against me on multiple times, as did other. So I just chose to lock it up. And when I locked it up, what's going to happen when you have unexpressed trauma, when you have unexpressed adverse experiences? They damage your body, all of your organs. It damages, your second and third brain in your gut. You're constantly dumping cortisol and adrenaline. You live under stress 24/7 because you have the secret here behind you. And when you meet people, I believed that when I meet people that they could see my secret. And so I was carrying so much shame, so much guilt, thinking everything was my fault, as I was told that it was when I was a child. It's just like this vicious circle that just goes round and round and round, that trying to escape from that, that is, as I learned later in my own recovery path, that is the process of becoming unbound. To me, as I describe it, is trying to break free from that constant, infinite loop of shame, guilt, and self-blame, which is victim mindset.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been there for different reasons myself, so I can really relate. So, I mean, these, so what, it's quite shocking that these things happen. Now, do you think that the system's not set up to support people, or do you think that, and this may be an assumption, so sorry to ask you, that these people just didn't want to deal with what they've been put in front of them?
Well, okay, this is an interesting question, because probably up until about it was in the 70s that women actually started. I mean, yes, we'd always been advocating for ourselves and fighting for our rights, fighting for our voices to be heard. Primarily women, because men are abused too. Men are sexually abused as well as physically. However, in the 70s, we really started to make a stand and take a stand. And in the 80s, we started making a little bit of headway, but not enough. Now, back in the 70s, it was still a very hush-hush topic. It still is. Part of what keeps us unaware is the language that we use. In the US alone, they call it, they have They have sexual abuse on the law books, legally in the system. They have it broken down to the minute detail, which is they call it molesting. They don't call it what it is. We don't talk about it in terms of what it actually is. It's violent. It's abuse. Don't water it down and call it molesting. Bring it up to the front and call it what it is.
It's like torture, really. I mean,
yes, it is, because we live with that. It changes you. You are never the same. The person that I was born to be, I am working on. This is what unbinding is. I am working every day to become the person that I was born to be. She was buried. She was buried ever since she was a child, ever since that first time when I was told, the first time I remember, and I wrote about it in the opening of my book. There's a scene where I'm sitting in my memory, I'm sitting on the edge of a sidewalk, and my father is telling me, he's asking me questions, and he's telling me that my mom and him are going to have to go to court. But when I go to court, I can't tell the man who's going to talk to me any of our secrets. I can't tell him about our special playtime. That right there set in motion years of confusion. I'm supposed to be good and do what you tell me to do, but at the same time, I'm supposed to lie for you.
Yeah, if it's playtime, why has it got to be hidden?
Yes. Yeah. And so I lived in that confusion, and I kept carrying that guilt and shame because I didn't tell. But I didn't tell out of fear. So maybe I'm hoping I make a little bit of sense here, but it just round and round and round. And trauma to me is like this. If you can imagine a spiral, there's just, like a tornado. You've got the great big massive cloud up top, and it's like living in a Cat 5 tornado, because you've got this blackness that's up here. And so many times it'll drop down and hit and impact various points of your life, your job, your relationships, your friendships, the choices that you make on a daily basis, whether or not to get up, how you're going to dress, what you're going to do with your hair, whether or not to get tattooed. Every decision you make is affected by those core wounds that normally are, that I'm not going to say normally, but when they hit, they usually come in childhood. Most of us don't remember them. Me, I remembered them. I remembered every single one of them because I've lived them. And then I turned around and made choices. When I ran away, I got pregnant. And then I was forced to marry the man that impregnated me. We had 4 children together, and I stuck with everything that he did to us, abusing the children and me both, until I was able to. So that was another choice that I made.
Yeah, but because it was kind of normal to you, I suppose.
Yeah, because it was normal to me. And then, what did I do? I jumped right into another negative Black relationship where, still more violence, but of a different kind. This time it was narcissism. I stepped right into a narcissistic relationship. Didn't know it, had no idea, but I tried to get through it until I couldn't do it anymore.
I think like it is interesting how as humans we do model things, and especially the things we see at those critical years, sort of up to 7, 8 years old, like both relationships and parenting are the 2 key areas. There are others, but that I see myself is that you see what you think is a normal relationship, and you don't know otherwise because you've only seen this one, and the others you've seen from the outside, you don't see behind closed doors. And then parenting as well, unless you've made what I call a conscious decision about what's the right way to parent and how you deal with things, and gone out and learned stuff, you will just replicate what you saw almost. Right. I think that was a big part of the change for me, was that when I suddenly found myself shouting at a 3-year-old and I was like, I don't agree with this. This is just a reactive behavior. So really, wanted to ask though, so you had these 2 instances. You had the incident with the teacher, and then you had the incident with the officer, the senior officer. And so how did you feel? How did that make you feel at the time? What did you think you could do? Because you said you ran away slightly after those 2 incidents happened. What was going on there? What did you run away for? How were you feeling? What were you thinking about people around you? Did you feel like somebody was going to help you, or did you feel like nobody was going to help you?
I felt abandoned. I
Mm.
felt abandoned. I remember being angry. I remember being confused, but feeling mostly abandoned during that whole process. I felt even more abandoned the night that I'd made my decision to run away. My father had the very last time that he had sexual relations with me was the night that I decided to run away. And well, when I ran, I hitchhiked. It was very unsafe then, but it's even more so unsafe now. But back in the 70s, you could hitchhike, and it helped that I had a gun because I had stolen his gun for protection. And when I ran, I didn't have any skills. I didn't have any job skills. So I got into prostitution. I got into stripping. Very difficult decision to make. But here's the important point that I want to make is decisions you make are for survival. They're not based on so much self-harm. We don't think, I didn't think at that time, I'm not going to say we. I was not thinking at that time of self-harm or anything. What I was thinking of was, I have to survive. I have to make my way. I have to get away. I have to stay alive. So everything I did was for my survival. Every choice I made. I didn't know it then. I know it now. And that was a huge point for me, was to forgive myself for shaming myself for what somebody else did to me. And that right there is how I've been working on breaking free from the past, from all my past experiences. Was not forgiving myself so much, but understanding all of it, where my core wounds came from, what they were, that I was living and making choices based on need to survive. The same with my children. When I was raising them in survival mode, victim mindset / survival mode at the same time. We weren't thriving. I was trying to teach them how to survive.
Yeah, you reminded me of something that I just realized myself, and I put it like this, is that it's not that I didn't love myself, it's that I didn't know how to love myself.
There it is, right there. Yeah. I didn't know how. I didn't understand. I didn't know what love was. I did not feel love. To me, this is one of my pivotal moments in my life. Is I was actually in a conversation with, and I'm going to read you an excerpt about this, but I was in a conversation with Syl Sebastian, and he was the first person who helped me understand how to like myself. And then it was after that I started to learn to love me, the moreness of me. And I didn't even love myself during my last relationship. I'm a widow. My husband died 5 years ago. That was more trauma.
Yes.
And I didn't even love me when I was married to him. And that was a decent relationship. I mean, it had its problems, but it was decent compared to any of the others I'd ever had. And that's the other thing about trauma. Remember I said, it affects all of our choices. We relationship hop. We might become serial daters. We might become serial marriers. We might completely avoid. Our attachment issues become very profound, extremely profound. We can become disproportionately attached to our children. We can enmesh them in our codependency. We do all of these things to keep ourselves away from the belief that we're bad, that we're damaged goods. That's the message trauma gives us, at least the one it gave me, that I was bad, that I was worthless.
I think this is the thing, is like you were talking a lot, there's there's the shame and the guilt, and it's not something that you can easily, even still, like you said today, talk about, or that you'd want to talk about, really.
Right.
So I can really understand. Now Anna's asked a really interesting question. Now she's asked, do you think that girls are groomed from birth to please, and that sets them up for being used? Now I think both of you being ladies, I just wonder if this is even specific to women. So what's your experience of it though? Do you agree with her?
I think that, to me,
Mhm.
answering that generically, I would have to say yes, based on social conditioning, based on
Mm.
all the years, because, traditionally, it's always been, little girls are supposed to be quiet and polite and kind and please and do certain jobs, look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. However, how I raised my own children was definitely not to please. It was to fight, to stand, to fight. And my children are stronger. I gotta tell you, my kids are stronger than I ever thought I could be. They're amazing.
Mm.
Or my
Good.
grandkids.
They've got your DNA. So
Yeah, but are we raised to please? Like I said, depending on the family, depending on their background, we could very well be. And I think boys the same way. They could be groomed. I know that I was groomed. I don't know what was wrong with the man that I called my father. He's long since passed. I don't know what the deal was. I do know that I had to learn how to understand, because the only way I was going to dump and get rid of and completely release all of that guilt and shame that I was carrying was to understand my story, including, was I groomed? Was that how I was intentionally raised? And for me, yes, I was. I was raised that way.
right, yeah, and I agree with you 100%. So just to sorry, a question that popped into my mind is, do you know his history and his childhood, your father?
A little bit. He was an only child, and he was, in every sense of the word, abandoned, but not intentionally. His abandonment wound was his mother had placed him, because he lost his father before he could even remember. He died in a car accident. And so his mother put him in a military boarding school. And that's where he stayed until he graduated from high school and then joined the service. So something somewhere along the line told him
Yeah.
that the women in his life were abandoning him, including, my biological mother, whom he divorced. She didn't divorce him. He took us from her. His mother, the abandonment issue then. So I don't know really what happened. I have my suspicions, but
Yeah.
I don't know his story. He never talked about it. We just know he did not like he had a very interesting relationship with his mother, very codependent and enmeshed.
Mm. So kind of like maybe he felt like the school was an abandonment, but we won't go there. I mean, because I can't imagine. I went to a military school, funny enough. So I went to a naval boarding school. And so I was lucky though, this was in the 90s. But I know that prior to that, and even when I was there, bullying was rife, and it was pretty full on, when you lock 750 boys together with free time and being forced to do long hours, people get bored and frustrated and they take it out on each other. But yeah, I mean, no, interesting, really interesting. I think it definitely has abandonment has a lot to unanswered questions, actually. Unanswered questions have a lot to do with things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That statement right there, that there are unanswered questions, that's something that I really had to work hard with myself, to accept, to acknowledge, number one, that there are unanswered questions I've got that we'll never know the answer to. And then I had to accept that. I had to learn how to appreciate that is the plan of the universe, and that this is me, this is my journey. I chose this path for some reason, somehow. And there's something that I'm supposed to learn from this. And I've been unwrapping that. I'm learning it, or not unlearning, but learning about it and learning how to unwrap messages that come through. And I'm not going to say that download stuff, but I mean just messages that come through in life, lessons I'm supposed to learn from all of this, which is a very important point. I used to be so angry. I parented angry. I'm not going to say abusive, but I was an angry parent. I was an angry wife. I was angry person, period.
Mhm.
I didn't know happiness. And having to release that anger and go to the other side and find a reason that all of this happened, that was helpful. It was difficult, but it was helpful.
Yeah, no, it's really challenging. And so lots of comments here. And so Anna's put, narcissists gravitate to women who have been abused. I had this
Yes.
experience too.
Yes, they do. They do. They do. It's like we wear this sign and we can't see it, but we wear a sign that it's almost like it's, victim, victim, victim. And we're a target. We are an easy target just because we want to be loved.
Yes.
We
Is
want
there
to be loved.
Yeah, and I think this is the big thing. I mean, some of the stuff like my circumstances and situations, but I had a lot of anger for some of my life, and most of that was when I wasn't doing what I needed to do for myself.
There it is.
Yeah, that was something that was really made me an angry person. As I started admitting, and I think this is the thing, how do you find, when did you first start being honest with yourself about this and changing this? And getting some closure?
Right. Well, my husband, he was diagnosed with cancer. I was trying to go back to my timeline here. He was diagnosed with cancer, and then 5 months later, he passed. And that was not something, I didn't have enough time to prepare. I just didn't. And we were raising our grandson at the time, we still am. And there came a night when I had had enough. I was feeling abandoned. I don't remember everything that I was feeling, but I had made a plan to take my life. And I had made previous attempts, over the years, 2 of them fairly seriously. And that particular night, I had been planning on it for a little over a week. Had a plan, was going to take pills, was just going to go to sleep, leave a note, etc. And it failed. I believe that it failed because either my husband or a guardian angel or somebody intervened and pissed me off. And what pissed me off was that I couldn't cry. I wanted to cry and I was dry. I just couldn't do it. And that got me mad. And when I got mad, then I started throwing a fit. And when I threw a fit, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I could talk to somebody. So I grabbed my phone and I'm scrolling rapidly and I'm looking for an answer. I'm looking for anybody to talk to. Called a suicide hotline and they gave me the cheekiest answer ever. I just know that I wasn't satisfied. And I thought, well, you guys aren't a lot of help. And I scrolled some more and I came across a Facebook group that I became interested in. And it was after that, after I got involved in that group and I started connecting with other people who were seeking the same thing as me. They were seeking love. They were seeking understanding of their story, of themselves, understanding of their life, their purpose. And all of that was foreign to me. All of it was. That's what got me started. That's what put me on the path to looking for understanding, looking to unpack my story. Because I knew that if I had a little bit of hope and if something saved me that moment, then there had to be more to my story. There had to be more than what I had been through and experienced. And I just knew that I needed something different. I needed a new way of living other than what I had been trying to do, which was mask. Was masking myself to the world for more than 50 some odd years.
Yeah.
And in these groups, one of the exercises, I had always journaled, but never to this extent. And one of the exercises was to write my story. Well, I wrote it, I think, in like 3 pages. I wrote a lifetime of trauma in 3 pages. There was a lot that I left out, considering now that it's a book. And when I read my story, the response was so moving to me that I felt like, wait a minute, I just impacted these people and I helped them understand that we don't have to be ashamed. And I thought, okay, if I could help them, what can I do for me? And I started, as I started working more and more with Sil, just things started to unbind. And then I started meeting more people, you, Bina. I've met so many amazing people on this journey that I can't pinpoint any one moment other than that turning point. And that's kind of, I consider January 1st of 2019 my birth date, even though I was born in August. That is my birth date because that's the day that I was actually reborn. You know, spiritually, mentally, physically, I gained a new life.
And I'm glad you did. And I think how long you live with that is absolute testament to your strength. You know, and unfortunately why you chose this life, because I think many of us couldn't. I mean, personally, I tried to kill myself at 17 and I didn't have half the traumatic experiences, and most of my traumatic experiences were self-inflicted at that point, as they were for most of my life. So yes, what came first? So you started sharing your story in the group, and that helped other people. And then did you write the book?
The book, actually, I was encouraged to write my story. I was encouraged to write it and publish it by a coach that I had at the time, by Sil, by so many people who knew me. They just kept saying, Sherry, you've got to publish your story. You have to share it. And it's like, but wait, a lot of my abusers are still alive, and they still are. Have they read it? I don't know. But, you know, so what came first? The sharing of my story, the discovery of writing. Like I said before, I sidetrack sometimes. I was journaling, but not to this extent where I was actually feeling the journaling, where I was allowing the thoughts to flow from my body to my hand, to the pen, to the paper, and then actually reread back what I was writing and identify, not label. That's something that I learned not to do. I did not want to become a label. I didn't want to become a poster child. I needed to identify what I was feeling, what I was thinking, and learn how to own it, instead of blaming or ignoring or burying. That journaling took me through shadow work, inner child healing, the last several years of recovery work, of understanding my children, of learning how to communicate with them and with myself, with my inner child, and with other people. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean,
first.
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how we do get into default behavior, and then when we open or unbind, as you say, we find that there's there's an us hiding underneath there that wants to just communicate normally and be different. We have to relearn, like you say. Yeah. And so
it's scary to meet yourself. It is completely scary to meet your authentic self. It really, at least it was for me. I was really afraid. Doing mirror work, no. I tried mirror work, and I just try and honestly, if anybody wants to really test yourself, how much you really like yourself, stand in the mirror and look at yourself for at least a count of 50, not just your face, look directly into your own eyes. Eye gaze with yourself. Extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've tried it a few times, and this is the thing I like about Zoom, is that I have no choice. Okay, I suppose I could turn my screen off, but I'm constantly seeing myself, and like, it is quite shocking sometimes. There's this thing where I raise my eyebrow. I can't do it. I can do two, but I can't do one on demand. Yet it happens all the time in Zoom, and I'm like, what's causing that muscle reaction? Like, what's the actual thought that's going through there? How am I feeling at this moment? Yeah, it's very interesting. No, so sorry, I digress. And yeah, I mean, so since then you've now met lots of people and connected with people. And so tell me about the book. What is the book? Is it your story? What's in the book?
Okay, this book, when I started to write it, I wrote for healing is why I wrote it. And then funnily, it was kind of funny because when I first wrote it, it was very robotic. It was lacking feeling. So this book turned out to be an intent to feel. And that's why it's called Unbound, 100 Days of Intent, because I had to set 100 days of writing. I wrote every day for 100 days, parts of my story, and I had to rewrite them with feeling, not just when you're in counseling, which by the way, really was not effective for me. I was in counseling for more than 20 years total, and it just never helped as much as writing, as much as setting an intent to feel and understanding that I have choice. Those are my two big things that I live with, intent and choice. So anyways, back to the book. It's my story. It's my memoir. It starts about the age of 3 roughly, and it goes all the way through the death of my husband into the end, the epilogue, where is it okay if I read for you?
Please. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. In the epilogue itself, I'll read up just to a point. My entire life, I hated myself and everything about me. It was hard work liking myself, but love myself? No. I believed I was not capable. And there she was. In the mirror one evening, she took a picture of herself and her reflection, smiling. There were tears just before the picture was taken and tears after. But she liked who she was and how strong and courageous she was. The beauty in her image was the courage that was powering through in that one moment, and she was loving who she saw. It was hard to see herself in her own eyes, but at the same time empowering. The feeling after seeing the image inspired her to be more. Not more as in famous or a following, but more for herself. She wanted to be the best woman she could be. That night was her turning point towards love, finding intimate, deep, profoundly moving love. She didn't have to search far because it was in her all along. There were days of internal searching, releasing memories with tears and laughter while keeping what mattered, her soul, intact. Letting go, sharing her story with good intent, sharing her life with others so they can heal and have hope in this life, sharing her love and watching herself grow. The other day, after a long talk with a deeply beautiful person, I fell in love. Not with the person I was speaking to, but with myself, with Cher. I never experienced love in this manner, open, with no expectations, no promises, and nothing to lose. Just knowing her courage, the light inside her, and the goodness she possessed made me love her more. She let go and let love. She had begun the process of shedding the baggage that was too heavy. She was starting new and eager to learn. And the quote on that page is, "Forgiveness is understanding." When we can grasp the concept of what a story our abusers were living with when they made the choice to hurt us, the process of forgiveness comes a little easier. My father was rejected by the women in his life he was closest to. While it doesn't excuse his actions towards me, understanding he was coming from the pain of rejection helped me see his humanity and try not to paint him as the monster. My ex, forced into a marriage neither one of us wanted to be in. My biological mother came from a family of fractured stories, and most likely not much was shared in the way of feelings. And the narcissist had his own story of pain, and my late husband, a deeper pain of rejection and fear of abandonment. And everyone I came across had a story to tell. So much of what I lived through depended on several things that I was missing in my life: love, trust, acceptance, boundaries, and values. There was one other gift to me that needed to be opened, the gift of choice. All along, there was the ability to choose my path, and until I embraced that concept, there was never going to be change.
Wow. What, I mean, and what an awakening. I mean, I love the way you expressed that. I mean, the question that really springs to mind, because it made me think of so many things, is how did you feel after you started having these experiences and, you know, letting it all out, unbinding yourself after all these years?
In the beginning, it was terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I was very uncertain of myself. I really had to work through a lot of self-doubt because I had no confidence, and my self-worth was, you know, way down there.
Mm-hmm.
As I progressed, the more I wrote, the more I understood. And the more I understood, the better I started to feel about myself. And I absolutely love when I get these major aha moments. Going through, by the way, I did a lot of work with Wave Impeccability Program. You know, that's massive amounts of work. A lot of hours of writing, a lot of hours of talking and understanding the psychology of the abuse, not blaming myself, releasing all of that. And the more I released, the lighter I began to feel, which took me, I did all the inner work first. Okay, this is something I'm really proud of. I did all the inner work first. And it was February of last year, February 14th, actually, at a doctor's appointment, I decided to make another life change, which was to change the physical part of me, to start releasing the trauma from my body. So I had been doing exercises, I started doing exercises and nutrition management and sleep management, mood management, everything for my body that I had probably not done since 8th grade. I started out at 278 pounds, and I've lost 75 pounds now. I'm still on that journey. And that is because in my head, I see it as I was shedding and releasing all of the garbage, I was shedding it from my body, not just from my spirit, but from my body, because your body traps all that emotional trauma and it holds it in because you want to protect yourself. The body says, no, 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 save me. So how did I feel? In time, amazing. I still have my rough days. I'm not going to say it's perfect. There's days when I still have self-doubt, like coming on today. I was scared. I was really scared to come today and talk. But I'm not now, you know, because you just get into it and you start feeling about the flow and you start thinking about what can I do for others? What do others need to know? What do they want to know from me that can help make their lives just a little bit easier?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad you did. And I understand. I mean, I think there are many things in life that will stay with us for life. It's just whether we've got the tools to deal with them when they come back up in the wrong way. What really springs to mind for me is, like you said about the decisions you made when you were younger, after you left, ran away and everything. And I think certain things like self-worth, self-confidence, self-respect, if you don't know them, you don't know them. You know?
Right.
If you don't know, I always felt I was unconfident. Actually, I was really more confident than most people, but I just thought I was unconfident. But when I look at all the things I did in my life that most people would be like, I'm not going to do that. Suddenly realized, no, I just didn't know what it was. And the self-worth one, I never learned to, like I said, I love myself, but I never knew how to love myself. So I used to drink like a fish and take every chemical under the sun and take them all at the same time together. And and see, I never reached a limit, to be honest. I had built up such tolerance over so many years that I had no limit. And it was, looking back, it's like, why did you do that? But that's because I didn't know what I know now. Yeah. I didn't know what self-worth felt like. I didn't know what it felt like to know myself. I
didn't know boundaries. I had no idea of boundaries. I used to give myself away in every aspect of the work, physically, emotionally, financially, sexually. It doesn't matter. I would give myself away just because I craved love so much. And would it be returned? No, but I didn't
Mm.
know any better.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
like,
didn't know.
yeah, absolutely. It's like you don't have the right to have boundaries or what they even are.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, what is a boundary? I think it was the two things that really changed for me was when I was finally really honest with myself. I suddenly had this epiphany moment where I'm like, actually, you're still telling yourself a story here. You could have done better, or you could have done that. And
yeah.
when I realized that, and I was like really honest with myself, my life changed. And
Yeah.
then the boundaries as well. And I think they're really, really crucial for all people to be able to say, I have the right to say no, I have the right to do what I want to do
Yeah.
with myself.
I think one of the most difficult challenges, this question just popped into my head for what, it's like, what would be my most difficult challenge in all of this? I think that would be the understanding that first I had a choice. I didn't know I had choices, but to understand and learn first, that I had a choice, that was huge. That I could set an intent and make things happen. That's a lot of power, that I could choose to do that. But then also, that I didn't have to be better. I didn't have to change me. It wasn't me that needed to change. It was my beliefs. It
Yeah.
was what I believed about myself. So I wanted to think differently. I wanted to know how to feel different other than waking up in the morning and feeling dread because I woke up yet another day and had to face all this other stuff. Instead, I learned that, there is a different way that I can do this. I can live differently. I can, and I want to share real quick here where Unbound came from.
Please, yeah.
In the way of impeccability, my real name is Sherry Marchman Day. In the way of impeccability, though, we're doing the program very first early stages, and it was shortly after the person, by the way, that helped me understand that I liked myself was Phil and Bina, and he has this. It's like an intuition, I'm going to call it, that he gets when he sees people that he's working with, and he likes to rename us as we're developing. And what he saw in me was I was unbinding. I was unbinding and peeling back all the layers that I had wrapped myself up in all those years, my entire life. So that's where Unbound came from. So then now it's just Share Unbound. And is this something I can sell? No. But is it something that I can help others understand? Yes. And that's what I work to do. That's what my recovery writing is. It's write every day. I don't feel normal if I haven't written that day. So
good, really good for you. I think actually, like, as a growing up as a kid, everyone's saying, oh, you should keep a journal. I never did any of those things. And now as an adult, I journal every day nearly, if not more than once a day. And yeah, it's a very enlightening experience. I mean, it's a real eye-opener.
I gave it the term recovery writing for me personally, because journaling sounded like homework. Journaling sounded like schoolwork, like homework, or like, oh, this is what your counselor wants you to do. Like, no, why am I writing? Well, I'm writing for my recovery. And so I've pretty well stuck with that and called myself a recovery writer, an author, speaker, facilitator. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, because like I had quite a rebellious way about me, but also I was a people pleaser. And so when I started journaling, what happened was this very similar story to you, actually. I basically lost everything in the pandemic. Quite a traumatic experience, was supporting a family living in a foreign country, and the people who owed me money were refusing to pay me, even though they had plenty of it. And I went into a Facebook group and I asked a question, and it led me to a coach, and he introduced me to journaling. He first of all said, look, I do a meditation group, but it's a meditation group where we journal. So I was like,
hard.
I was just like this. I was like, meditation, come on, like, that's what like random people, woo-woo people who think they're all up here compared to
Yep.
other people do, you know. I'm
Yep.
not gonna, I don't lie. And that's kind of like what my outlook on meditation was and my experience with spiritual people to that point. But I was so like, I luckily had overcome depression and overcome anxiety and knew I was heading that way at the time, no matter, because I was in a situation I couldn't change very easily. And so I just said, look, I'll try anything. You know, I was just like, yeah, tell me. And actually, yeah, it was really interesting. I learned from meditation that it isn't all about the long-term goal is to get complete silence. So years later, I'm able to get completely calm my mind. But even now, still, after meditating for this is my second year, so I'm nearly at 2 full years, like 700 and something days of meditation.
Wow.
I still have days where it takes me 5 minutes to clear my mind, but what I like about it is I know what's on my mind. You know, and that's the thing. Like life is so, yeah, life is so busy, so hectic. There's so many inputs coming in. There's people said this, people said that. They saw this on the news, saw this on the TV, and it's like you're so busy with what you're doing, you don't realize how these things are actually affecting you.
Exactly. I you know, how they affect me. I try to meditate. I'm the kind of meditator that will, you know, close your eyes and all of a sudden I'm opening up another one, looking around going, what was that?
Yeah, I could, yeah.
I struggle with that. So what
I've got these little earplugs. I've got these earplugs. That's the thing with kids.
I meditate, you know, and so I meditate through my writing. And some days I write a lot, and other days it's nothing, and not everything I journal gets posted. But I've had some people, you know, they get appalled. They're like, how can you write some of this stuff? You know, especially when it comes to the intimate details of my story. I write it because other people need to know it, like we talked about before. I am a big mental health advocate, and I'm also an advocate for changing our laws. There's way too many things that people are getting away with that they ought not to, especially when it comes to our children.
Yeah.
We need to listen more. That's just listen. We just need to listen more. We need to pay it more attention. You know, stop worrying about what the darn football teams are doing and start paying attention to what's happening in our schools, what's happening in our homes, the unspoken stories. So
I think, yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think maybe I haven't had enough experience. Now, there were many people I've known throughout my life who have had similar stories. However, I do hear a lot more of it from the US, but I suppose it's a bigger country, so it's just one of those things. But yeah, I think we are reaching, and I know we are reaching an age, like you're saying yourself, where we can go out and it's we can share these stories, and people want to hear them now because there's so many of us who have had them in our own unique ways. It's probably the best way to put it. And ultimately, like when I killed myself at 17 because I slipped my wrist and blood came pouring out, so I basically killed myself. I realized this is my only one life, and so no matter what I'd done or what had happened to me, do I want to live it or not? You know, because I'm not going to get another chance. You know, this memory, this persona, this person is not going to come back and go, hey, mum, dad, brother, sister, whoever else, you know, children, I'm back. It's like, no, it's going to be like, even if I come back, I'm not even going to remember me. You know, and it was quite, but the reason I mention it is because I do see now as an adult how it was just a lack of understanding about how I was working and actually what I was doing to myself mentally. That caused me to get to that point. And even before that, I was an advocate of mental health and sharing my lessons from a ripe old age of 13, 14 years old when I got diagnosed. And so, but tell me, what is your unique approach to trauma? Well, tell me, what's the conventional approach to trauma before we talk about your unique?
Talk therapy.
Talk therapy.
It's been talk therapy for years. You said, and my experience was I'd go in and I'd speak to a counselor, and there was one counselor who just blew me away and I never saw her again. But talk therapy seems to be the predominant one, and medication. You know, dumb it down. the theory being, and I'm not bashing counseling. Okay, please, I'm not. If anybody's a counselor listening, I'm not bashing your profession. Back in the 70s and 80s, anyways, it was all talk therapy paired with medication. Now, the way I see it, they're using a bottom-up approach. Before it was top-down. Now it's bottom-up approach. Now they're really working with the trauma in the body. Everything that gets stored on a cellular level inside of you, your organs, everything, it impacts everything about your mind, body, spirit. That approach, understanding that the body knows just as much as the mind does about what happened to you, taking that approach. So there's, they incorporate exercise, nutrition, your sleep and mood management, movement, yoga. Yoga is huge. Writing is another form of, somatic healing. So there's a lot of somatic healing processes. There's energy work being done. Everybody that's in the conscious creators community, I see all have each a unique approach to addressing aspects of trauma, or if not, trauma head on. And it just depends on who you are and what it is you're looking for. You can find whatever approach you use, to me, is wonderful. As long as you are actively looking for understanding. You're not always going to get an answer, but as long as you can understand yourself, your story, how it's impacting you, then you can start to release the things. You're never going to recover fully from codependency. Yes, you can change your attachment styles, people pleasing, all of that stuff. However, you're always going to be in recovery. It's depending on the level of trauma that you experienced. You'll always be in recovery. So my approach, when it comes to like unbinding, that's what it is. It's just based on choice and intent. Choice being the number one. First off comes awareness. When they come to me, they're already aware that there's a problem. When somebody comes to me and says, hey, can we talk? Can you work with me? I already know that they're aware because they're already identifying that there is something that's happened to them that they don't understand. Then we work through acknowledgement. We start unpacking, and we go from the very present and we go all the way back. Then from there we go into acceptance, and then finally appreciation for self, because that's something that we just miss. We miss so much on a daily basis. I even forget to do that. I forget to appreciate myself on a daily basis. I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah, it's not something we're taught, is it?
No, there again, I mean, because we're always so afraid. I was told as a kid that if I liked myself, I was taught that vanity is a sin, that it's horrible, that I'm not supposed to be a vain child. So liking myself was taboo. And I grew up believing that. And as I matured into adult, liking myself was taboo. Thinking I was attractive, thinking that I was pretty, thinking anything nice about myself was vain. Well, I learned that a little bit of vanity is necessary, that we do have to have that. And it's okay to look at myself in the mirror and smile and go, you look good today, lady. It's okay. We can do that.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? So how many things we're taught as children.
Oh, it's horrible.
Are actually the cause of our traumas as adults. And even till today, when you talked about the different types of more conventional therapy, it's still kind of seen as the norm. It's still kind of seen as like, it's for mental health or trauma. So for depression or trauma, it's very similar. Go and talk. And unfortunately, I learned, because I've done both journeys, the spiritual journey, I call it, and the mental health journey. Mental health digs back all the way through the problems, all the repercussions of all the different things are pretty much quite irrelevant till if you're lucky, which it gets to the root cause. And I'll be honest, I thought I'd recovered from I got over my depression because it was actually a chemical imbalance caused by negative thinking, which I changed through changing the way I thought. However, I hadn't really learned to love myself or really develop self-worth, for example, because I still had a lot of guilt and blame for the repercussions of the traumatic experience that I had as a child, an abandonment issue. Whereas spiritual or writing, meditation, even though you're not, but journaling is a form of meditation in a lot of ways because you shut the
Right.
mind down to it. Can take you straight to the root cause of a problem. You know, and so.
But I also want to help you understand something here.
Please.
It takes years. This is not a once or twice, or you can attend a course for 9 or 12 weeks or what have you, and you're going to be recovered. It's a beginning. It's a recovery path. The event, the negative experience that they label as trauma later on, that never goes away. That memory stays there forever. And if you don't remember it, many times the effects of the repression and suppression are going to stay with you. It's going to stay with you in one form or another, in your body, in your actions, in your behaviors, the thoughts and feelings and beliefs. It will stay. The idea to me is to get a person to the point where they can understand and utilize what works best for them, whether it's journaling, yoga, energy here, like is it called Reiki?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And there are so many different ways to unpack all that and to start unlearning. There is no one right way. In my opinion, there's no one right way to approach trauma. There's a wrong way. The wrong way is not to. The wrong way is just ignoring it.
Yeah, I love it. I think, like, for anybody who may be watching this or the recording who's suffering from trauma, I think when you look at the world right now, many people are waking up because we are unlearning a lot of things that are not supporting us, and looking for new ways to create a better life individually and collectively. And I've embraced the fact that that's for life. If one of the things I think is really, good about journaling and all these different other positive things you can introduce into your life is that they're self-discovery. It's about finding yourself. And I think, like, there is no end to it, because every day there's a new experience and new things are happening to you, and you'll uncover something else that you weren't aware of.
That's right. Every single day I write, I come up with something new. Somebody had said, how do you come up with so much content? I don't consider it content, because I do. You look on my Instagram and I think I'm over 2,000 posts now. I don't know. But I am working on book 2. I really am. I dug into that earlier this week. I'm like, okay, I've really got to get cracking on it. The writing itself, yes, number one, it is meditative. It's healing. It's cathartic on so many different levels. They've even done studies at how valuable it is. It's just as valuable as yoga. So I really don't want people to go poo on it. I found another form of healing, another modality, which is, I love it. Anna introduced a course yesterday, doodling or woodling, or drawing. Awesome. Drawing. I love drawing. I'm not that great at it, but I'll tell you what, it gives me a whole different experience than I get from writing. So if somebody were to ask me what they should do, number one, get rid of should, but what they could do, understand, number one, that you've got choice. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to live in pain. You don't have to live in fear, anxiety, worry, none of that. You just don't have to. And if you're in a bad situation right now, you still don't have to live that way. Secondly, it's all choice and it's intent. It's definitely intent. What do you want? What do you want from your life? What do you want to do different? What do you want to have different? How do you want to feel? And once you can start looking and exploring those questions for yourself, you're well on your way to your self-discovery. I still remember it's a second video I ever made and posted online of myself. I was really over the moon excited because I learned what self-discovery was. I was like a little 5-year-old going, you gotta see this, I'm discovering myself. This is so awesome. And I was really giddy, and it's my favorite video because it was genuine. It was me. It was that authentic me coming through. And it's like, yeah, that's what I want in my life.
I can completely relate, because I think, like, as it unfolds for me as I learn more about my authentic self. I realize I can see all these moments in my life where I wanted to make the choice to be me,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel acceptable. And so
Yeah.
I made the choice not to be me. And now I'm making the choice to be me. It's like a new feeling. It's like, oh, this is new. I've never felt this before. And this is something I really enjoy. Do you feel the same? Do you feel new
Yeah.
feelings, new ways of
I do. And something just came to mind, a word, cringe. Here's why. How I used to feel about myself. I could write and I would say, oh, golly, that action that I did was completely cringeworthy. No, that was just a different me. That was the me of then. That was the unaware me who didn't understand her light. She didn't understand the impact of her story, of her strength, of her courage. It was just old me, unaware me. But to call myself cringe at that time, or cringeworthy, or any bad names, that's still not doing justice to my present self. So I've learned how to think and believe differently and shift those thoughts into saying, no, that was just an unaware me. And, I love that person. I embrace her wholly, for all of her quirkiness, for all of her silly moments, for her manners, for her grace, for everything. I embrace all of it. I even embrace the part of me that, unfortunately, I used to shame myself for, having normal physical, biological reactions to being molested, to being sexually assaulted. And I used to carry that around thinking, oh my gosh, I'm such a horrible woman. No, I didn't have any control over myself. I didn't have any control over my body or what my body was going to do at the age of 5 or 6 or 7. You just don't.
No, and I mean, the work
I
you've
love
done
me.
is amazing. Yeah.
I do love me at this time. There are moments when I really have to struggle to bring forward that love, to really, especially when my grandson is very challenging right now. He's neurodivergent. Whole host of things, but he himself, he's working through his own traumas, but he is struggling with expressing them. He's only 12. And he's really struggling with expressing them. And they come out in very angry and violent ways. That those expressions, those feelings. Had I not gone through the experience that I did, my recovery path in the very beginning, gone through all this understanding, I don't believe that I would be able to properly parent him right now. I think I would have had to have given up, called somebody and said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. But instead, I keep telling myself, I've got this, I can do this. We were gifted this do-over for a reason. I was gifted the presence of him in my life for a reason. Don't know what that is, and I'll find out the day it all ends. But
I think, I think it's you're the person that can help him because of what you've been through. I think what springs to mind and brings me back to my childhood is I felt a lot of guilt and blame for the things that weren't my fault as well. Like being my dad leaving when I was 2, even as I grew up, I'm like, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I good enough? Was it, and I was 2, and I was blaming myself for somebody abandoning me at 2 years old, which showed up as anger. Because, and actually just before teens, adolescent and teenager, I was not aware of why that anger was coming out, but it was coming out,
exactly.
because
exactly.
I would get so frustrated. It wouldn't be clear to me that I was frustrated because I was blaming myself.
That victim mindset. We don't know anything better.
Absolutely.
A lot of people believe that they are surviving and they're actually still living in their victim mindset. But once you come to that realization that, oh man, I'm blaming me and I'm blaming the whole world and I'm just angry as everybody or at everybody, and that's when you can start to shift over into, more awareness, surviving, and then go into thriving.
Nice. Yeah. And it's awareness. I mean, getting that awareness, I think that's where it starts, is if you're watching this, knowing there is a lot of hope, more than hope. There's possibilities and opportunities for you. And then just gathering as much information, sit back for the ride, because it's not going to happen overnight.
Right. Right. And my way is not for everybody. It's definitely not going to happen overnight. My approach is not for everybody. I became very bold in sharing my story because that was initially, it was anger driven. There was an urge of anger. I had to speak everything that I wrote in my book. And there's even stuff in my book, in my life, that I did not put in the book because I thought, well, that's just too much for the public to have to read. They would have definitely not published it. So,
so yeah.
Yeah.
So there's still censorship, unfortunately, even like as we're waking up.
There is, yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things going on here.
Okay.
So Sil has mentioned when you started doing repeat backs and takeaways of your story with the application of awareness, discernment, and understanding, things changed profoundly. Yes? Yes,
absolutely. ADU. That is probably, and that runs in the back of my mind all the time. Those three words, awareness, discernment, and understanding. Something happens, and I'm trying to even teach my grandson this question of something happens, and it's like, I feel, based on what? Always based on what? What am I basing this on? What am I basing this bad thought on? I don't like that word bad. What am I basing a negative thought on? Always keeping in mind that awareness is my key to everything. If I'm aware, if I'm mindful, then I can be attuned. And when I'm attuned, then I can be open to receiving what it is I need to know in the moment. So, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually doing way of impeccability with Sil, and just done the first thing, and repeat backs and takeaways. Very important things. Yeah, I mean, it's going through things once, but when you go through them again and again, they really sink in. And I also want to say I did this show, but with myself a few months back. I think you saw it, and that I had to go through my entire story there, and it was probably the most worthwhile experience over the last 5 years, because I uncovered 2 or 3 things I still was feeling shame about, and it was like, well, okay, I know that I have a choice now whether to feel shame or not. Yeah. I don't have to keep holding on to that. And so I did the inner work, and cleared them before the show.
When I share aspects of my story sometimes with others, the more the deeper, the detailed ones, there are times when tears will still come to my eyes, especially like with the passing of my late husband. When I think of, and that happened just before COVID, by the way, and then COVID, between his death and COVID happening, I lost my business, and then I had to sell my house. That still brings tears. That I can feel them right now. That still brings that emotion of, if only. See what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's like, if only. I have to make a choice when those things happen. When those emotions come up, I have to make a choice in that moment. Okay, I'm aware of them. What am I going to do with it? Where are these coming from? Well, it's a memory, and it's a very valid memory. And yes, it does hurt still. But am I going to let it affect me? No, I will not. I just know that it's a part of me, and I'm going to always feel it. So, I know what you were saying. Maybe I got off track there, but it's
a good one, actually, because you brought me up to, I can really relate to that as well. My personal experience of that is that, especially with bereavements and things, is that there's always going to be the initial, like, hey, I miss you. Oh, God, it's never going to be the same again. There's always going to be that. I've got friends and ex-partners and family members who have passed away. But then there's also I was lucky to have that experience, I couldn't ask for more. And I always reframe it that way myself, is like, it's good that my heart still works and that I'm connected to them. And with my current understanding, they're here with me now in the energy, with everything, although it's not quite the same. But at the same time, wow, there's many people that go through their life without ever having an experience like I did, without having that friendship, that relationship.
That's true. That's true. Because I mean, we were best friends. We were better best friends than we were husband and wife. So we really were. And And so, you know, it's that part that I do. I miss the best friend. But at the same time, I also understand now that his passing was very deliberate. That's the only way that I can really make sense of it. It was very deliberate. The speed of it, the impact that it left. Because had he not, I never would have been on this healing path. I never would have written my story. I never would have spoken my story. I would have lived in until I died in that very oversized, weakened body, filled with regret and with resentment.
It's always,
it happened for a reason. He passed for a reason.
yeah, it's always hard to see that, I think, for many. Well, not, I think like that myself. It's like, you know, there's things happen, everything happens for a reason. We're just not aware of that reason yet. And you know, the saddest things are often what it takes for it to trigger the necessary change for us to get that more from life.
Right.
It's really hard. So just so I don't keep you all day, there are a few more questions. Anna wants to know, did you have any help writing your book?
No, I did not. On occasion, well, okay, I had a good friend at the time. She was helping me by asking me questions about my story that would help prompt memories, that would help bring things up. Or she would say, hey, go back to this particular post because, you know, you had something really important there that you need to put in your book. So that kind of help. Otherwise, no, I did not know that I could write. I started to write, and the first pass was really dry. Like I said, it was pretty bad. But then the second pass came out with feelings. So no, there were on occasions I had somebody that would read it. Other than that, just a whole lot of encouragement to keep going, to keep writing. Yeah.
And so this led me on to a question. How did it feel when it went out there? How did it feel when the book was published and released?
I had an anxiety attack that day, to be honest, terrible one, because it was released on January 1st of 2020 and 2021, sorry.
Okay.
I had an attack. I was elated. I was excited. But what I was mostly afraid of was one of my abusers in particular was still alive, still is alive. So that scared me a little bit, but I knew that I had covered, you know, crossed all my T's, dotted all my I's. So the fear was unfounded. It was just up here, you know, it was based on associations. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's normal. I think sometimes
it's scary to tell. Okay, releasing the book, writing my book, this is the equivalent. It was the same, putting out my story like that, sharing it publicly, was the same as going to somebody that I thought I could trust as a kid and tell that, hey, I'm being hurt. That's how it felt, releasing it. And I had to move past that because I almost didn't publish it. A good friend of mine, I contacted him, I think it was just that week. I had to sign the draft and send it back, right? I had to approve the draft essentially and then send it back in. And I was sitting on it and I was just like, I'm terrified. I'm afraid to do this because what if? All the what ifs were coming in. And he talked me through it. He's like, if you don't do this, are you really going to like yourself? Are you going to throw everything away? Do you really want to go backwards? Yeah. Do you really want to be silenced? Because that's what I had inside of me. This book is the equivalent of letting out that silent scream, the scream that I had locked up in here for over 50 some odd years.
I think what you just pointed out there is how important you know, having somebody at least to talk to about the things you're about to do, because
Yeah.
they were so right. How to add to your problems, is not
Yeah.
show up for yourself. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, so just the question that came to mind, any negative repercussions from releasing the book?
No, none.
Brilliant. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Anyway, I was a bit on the edge of my seat there, but
It's been well received, and one of the most exciting things that I've heard from many of the women who have read my story, because it is also a recovery journal. There's writing prompts at the end of each page. There's a prompt, question for thought, basically, to help somebody else get started on their own journaling experience and story experience. So these women, they would buy the book and they'd give it to their counselor, and they would work through all of the questions and all of the stories and share their own experience with their therapist, with their coach, with whomever, as they read the book together. That was
nice.
an enormous, I don't want to say pin in my cap. What is that? That's some kind of warming feeling that I've always said that if I can help just one, that's worth it. And I did. I've helped a few.
I call those moments empowering.
There you go.
Yeah. Or as we recently got the empowering, but yeah, when that's the same as my life stories I was telling you about before, is when I was afraid of public speaking until 2020, and then, you know, really wanted to help people make a difference in their own life too. And I'd done it for myself quite a few times, and I was doing it again for myself at that moment, and we were all going through the pandemic, just went out and did it, and people were like, thank you for what you said today. And I was like, wow, I've never felt like this before. You know. I don't let, but I'm lucky to have learned a lot as well, like yourself. And I don't get caught up in ego by this. I'm not like, oh, I'm better, I'm helping. I'm like, the more I can give, the better this world I live in is.
Yeah.
You know? And that may be selfish, but hey, you know, double-edged sword. I'm giving and taking.
Well, I think that's okay to do. I really do. It's a nice balance to make. It's when we give too much of ourselves, that's when we're crossing over our own boundaries. That, you know, that's when we've got to rein it back in sometimes. Sometimes I do that. I'll give a little too much effort and time and attention to, you know, my grandson unnecessarily, just because I don't want to deal with the drama. We do that as parents. There's still some survival parenting going on that I'm still trying to break away from. But, you know, it's all a process, and it's a journey.
I think, I mean, I can really relate. I mean, myself, it's learned behavior, basically. So we learn it, we start doing it because we don't know any better. Once we've done it for a while, it's habitual, and then we have to unlearn it. But there's always going to be this default, and it's quite a big thing, because you have to manage your energy, you have to manage your sleep, you have to manage your food, because as soon as your energy is just a little bit down and you haven't got the brain power to think about the choice, you go to the default behavior.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. That's my experience of it. Yeah.
Yep.
I had to go, oh, not that again. Right. What's the new behavior? So there's been some really awesome comments here. I think and everybody's really said how inspired they are by your story, what an amazing person you are, you know, how positive you are, and what goodness, and how much respect they've got for you. Joey's mentioned that Facebook has been her online journal since 3rd grade until about 28. I think that's a good thing. 3rd grade, yeah.
Wait, is Facebook that old? Oh God, I've been on Facebook like.
Oh no, hold on, sorry. No, I misread it. You're right. It's from 28. Facebook became her journal. Yeah. Sorry. So I used to have journals, right? Sorry, Joey, got you wrong there. I thought, cool, I was thinking you'd been on Facebook a really long time. Has it even been around that so long? So yeah, no, but she journaled from 3rd grade till 28. Okay. Oh, good for you. But yeah, I never did, and I really recommend it to anyone, especially like structured journaling. I find helpful.
Oh, you like bullet journaling? Is that what you like?
No, just answering specific questions.
Oh, okay, writing prompts.
Writing prompts, and like really focusing on looking at how I'm evolving, for example. Really powerful.
For anybody who has not journaled, or who struggles with it, I recommend free writing, where it's a brain dump, basically. You just start with a blank piece of paper, and the first word that pops in your mind, write it down and keep going. Just keep writing. And it's going to be gibberish, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. Don't even pay attention to what it looks like. Just write it down. And then as you get used to that process, and I like to tell people, set a timer for 3 minutes, because then after 3 minutes comes, it's a little trick on the mind. After 3 minutes, then a lot of times you're like, well, I'm not done. I haven't finished that thought. And then you want to keep writing more and more and more. So it's a little way to trick your brain, but
yeah, I like that. So I'm gonna try that. I just made sure that my writing was productive and helping me. Yeah,
it doesn't have to be, just for, if you're just getting used to it. It's the same thing that, you know, you do with like we learned yesterday, you know, just start. Same with everything we do, whether it's exercise, whether it's putting down the candy bar, whether it's, you know, no matter what it is you're doing, just start. Just take the first step. Just one. That's all you need, one step.
Yeah, and I love that, because I was going to ask, I think that kind of answers my next question. If there's anyone out there who's still suffering from trauma, what would you recommend that they do to get to a better place in their life?
First thing is, if you don't know of anybody that you can trust, and trust comes very, very hard for survivors, very hard. If you don't know of anybody you can trust, please start writing it down, or at the very least, record your story. Use your phone, your computer, and voice record your thoughts. Get it down, because when it's out there, it makes it real. When it's here and it's locked up inside, it feels like we can keep hiding it. It makes it unreal, but it was real. It did happen. Yeah. So the sooner you start talking about it, the stronger you're going to get.
I think like the thing that really springs to my mind through all of this is, like you say, that you blame yourself. We all blame ourselves, and it's no reflection on you.
No,
it is a reflection on the person, the perpetrator, the person who put you in that situation. So Sil is here in the comments, actually, and he's been making lots of comments. He's said facing and dealing with the awful truth is a massive skill that's so critically important if we're to change.
That is one of the biggest things. Facing the truth. I used to think myself just such a horrible person, but it was pointed out to me that I have a lot of integrity, because that's one thing that I do not shy away from, is the truth. I will always be, sometimes even brutally honest with myself. It's not so much facing the truth about what happened to me, but accepting the responsibility and the accountability for my role in all this. And my role, first off, was to believe that okay, sorry, Sil, I'm gonna have to break a taboo, but to believe the BS. I just don't like saying that word. To believe the BS that I was given, that I was taught, that was like, you know, embedded in me. I had to come to terms with a lot of truths that my ego was a little bit out of whack there for a long time, and you know, I was too busy listening to it. My present self wasn't present at all. She was buried, but now she's front and center. So yeah, the truth is hard.
Yeah,
it's vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're living a lie until we admit the truth to ourselves. And there are a lot of truths. I mean, if I go through my own journey, I go, yes, life could be better. Yes, I made that mistake. Yes, this wrong was done to me. And, you know, there's all these layers of truth. There's the truth you have to admit to yourself about the choices you made. The truth you have to admit to yourself about the world you live in, you know, what's going on around you. And the fact that you have to live with it, but if you don't want to live with it, you have to find a way to change it.
There you go.
And work towards it.
Our choice. The biggest truth I find is choice, that many of us tell ourselves, I don't have a choice. We do. Now, we don't have a choice about the trauma that's inflicted on us, especially not as a kid. Don't. Or even if you're a man or a woman and you're being actively abused, you know, either sexually or physically or verbally. We don't always have a choice in that. However, we have a choice of what we're going to do about it. We have a choice of how we're going to react first, number one. And then secondly, how we're going to respond. That's where our choice is. And our choice is power. That's our biggest power, is choice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so Sil's in the comments again, and he has said to you, share, what else is important for you to share? um he put things people generally get wrong or misunderstand, and especially what they're unaware of that makes a difference. I think he's
One of the
triggering something.
wow, there's a lot. We could go on for hours. It's unaware of. One of the biggest ones for me, it goes back to statistics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of the statistics. I love the organizations, you know, that are out there helping survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, men and women both. Sometimes I don't like the idea that they're putting statistics out there. I know the reason for it, but one of the biggest ones in the US is that 1 out of every 3 women, I believe it is now, sometimes it depends on the site, but 1 out of every 3 on an average have been affected by sexual violence in their lifetime. Okay, that's just what's reported. Because every single person I've ever met in my life, every person has been affected by it. My mother, my sisters, my best friends, my close male friends, even my male friends have been affected at one time or another by sexual violence in their life. And we hide that and we push it underneath the carpet. And that's one of the awful truths that we don't look at. We don't look at the language that we're using, the language, the verbiage. We dumb it down all the time. For the sake of propriety, for the sake of, we don't want to offend people. Well, we might just have to get offended to start making some changes, because that seems to be the only time people do take notice is when they are offended.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you know, statistics and these kind of campaigns, let's call them, where they're trying to draw awareness, I mean, I think from my experience, one of the things, like, is that they're not as helpful sometimes as they could be, because they kind of say, hey, this is, you know, you're not alone, one is meant to be the message, but it kind of says this, accept life, it's like this. I found this with television in England, and I really, accept, like, it's not okay, you know. No, 1 in 3, and what, that's effing terrible, you know. That is really, really terrible.
Those are the ones, like I said, that are reported. That's just what's reported. And for men, it's 1 out of every 6. Right. Those are just the ones that are reported, because I'm going to tell you what, all 3 of my adult boys as children were sexually violated, all 3 of them. And it turned them into different people. They struggled. They really sincerely struggled, because as men, there is that taboo that it makes you unmanly to be assaulted by another man or a woman. It makes you unmanly. It does affect men. And so for that to be, that's a ridiculous number to me. It really is. And to water it down with, like you said, with those campaigns of, well, you know, it's okay to not be okay. I want that one to go away too. It is okay to not be okay, but finish up the statement, follow it up with something, action, or with an offer, or with, hey, you know, I'm here if you want to talk. I want people to stay away from memes, for one.
Well, I mean, it's okay to not be okay. For me, the next thing is, but it won't be forever. You know, because you know, there's something missing. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us today? I think we've just got over 90 minutes now. So
okay. I know, like I said, I could talk on this forever.
We can keep going for a while if you want.
Okay. Sorry, he just came bounding down the stairs. Okay. You know, you can find my book on Amazon. If you go to my page on Facebook, Deliberately Unbound, there's a link in there. It says campsite bio. You can locate me through there anywhere. The other thing I like to let people know is I will send an autographed copy of the book. If you want to reach out to me, we can talk about that. And my DMs are, I'm always open. I'm always open for people to just come and share. Just because you talk to me doesn't mean you're obligated to anything.
Yeah.
You know, I just want people to write. I want you to write about your stuff. I want you to write about your story. Find somebody to talk to. There's way too many of us walking around with that. I call them the walking wounded. There's so many people walking around that have that belief that no one's going to understand.
Mhm.
And we do.
Yeah, we do.
You know each
and
other in the
share them.
shadows. I was gonna say, I know those in the shadows. Am I gonna approach them and say, hey, I'm here? No. I just let people know that I am here.
You are, and I think Sil's just commented there, your ability to face and deal with the awful truth is your superpower, Cher.
Thank you, Sil. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've
And then-
had an amazing conversation with you, and I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to practice speaking, as well as sharing a little bit more about who I am.
Oh, you're absolutely honored to have you on here. And I want to thank you as well for being so open and sharing in such detail in a way that people can relate to and understand, and creating a space that's different for people who are going through a really challenging time. And, you know, and to anyone that is still keeping things on the inside, contact Cher, talk to her. Like she said, there's no obligations to work with her. We, our collective, the Conscious Creators community, we're here to help people. We're not here to make money. We're here to share the beautiful feelings we are now feeling through doing inner work and discovering ourselves. And so, you know, if you need to connect with Cher, her campsite bio is actually in the description of this video, as is a link, I think, to the book on Amazon. And so you can get both of them. However, if you want the signed book, they need to contact you. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Contact Cher directly and she'll arrange that for you. So thank you so much to everyone who was here today. Sorry I wasn't in the comments as much, but we did get through them all. Thank you all for your amazing comments and getting really involved with Cher's story and sharing your experiences too. It's really what makes the show. And next, I'm actually away now for 3 weeks. So yeah, I will be back on the 24th of April, and I will be talking about trauma with Rebecca Moln, and she is a trauma therapist who actually went to university, studied all those things and did all those things. So it's coming at it from another side of the scale. She's now a life coach helping people discover themselves as well. And she has a great show that you can find on YouTube too. So wonderful. Thank you, Cher, though, and it's been an amazing day. I really look forward to our next meeting, and have a lovely Easter holiday. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and we'll talk to you soon. Yeah, and to everybody online as well, too. Have a wonderful Easter holiday. Talk to you soon.